My name is Grace Hartwell. I am 42 years old. And the night my husband pushed me off the dance floor at our 15th anniversary ball was the night he learned that using something is not the same thing as owning it. The ball was held at the Beaumont Grand in Dallas. 500 guests filled the ballroom beneath suspended candles and white magnolia branches. Bankers, developers, architects, city officials, contractors, private investors, clients, family friends who had known Michael since before he could afford cuff links. The invitation said, Michael and Grace Hartwell, 15 years, a celebration of family, partnership, and the future. That last phrase should have warned me. The future. Michael had spent the previous year talking almost exclusively about the future. His company, Hartwell Urban Development, was preparing the largest project of his career. Harbor Point, $230 million. A riverfront redevelopment of old warehouses, a rail spur, and vacant industrial land into a boutique hotel. Apartments, restaurants, office space, a public promenade, and a restored freight terminal that Michael promised would become the new front porch of the city. He loved that phrase. Investors did too. The city had approved zoning. Architects had finished schematic design. A construction manager was pricing packages. Pre-leasing had started, and Meridian State Bank was preparing to lead a $140 million construction facility. That facility was why so many bankers were at our anniversary. Not officially. Officially, they were friends. Unofficially, after the anniversary program ended, a smaller group was supposed to move upstairs for a private land and credit verification session before final loan documents were circulated. Michael believed the financing was almost done. He had told investors, everything material is cleared. It was not. One parcel still controlled the project, 14.6 acres along the southern edge of Harbor Point. The old Bennett Wharf property. Michael talked about it as if it belonged to us. Sometimes he called it Grace's family land. Sometimes the Bennett parcel. Sometimes our river acreage. All three phrases were emotionally understandable. Only one was legally useful. The land belonged to the Bennett Legacy Trust. My family trust, not me personally. Not my father personally. Not Michael. The property had been bought by my grandfather in 1968 when riverfront industrial land was cheap and everyone assumed the old freight district would eventually be demolished. My grandfather did not demolish it. Neither did my father. The trust leased portions to warehouses, storage operators, and eventually artists who turned abandoned brick buildings into studios. By the time Michael conceived Harbor Point, the Bennett parcel sat exactly where his project needed, the hotel drop-off, underground utilities, part of the public promenade, and most importantly, the access road lenders required for construction. Without that acreage, Harbor Point was not impossible. It was much worse. Smaller. More expensive. Less connected. Probably not financeable under the current design. Michael knew that. He did not know how the trust was governed. That sounds unbelievable after 15 years of marriage. It was not. My father, Henry Bennett, founded Bennett Real Estate Partners in the 1980s. Built office parks, industrial projects, and mixed-use developments across Texas. Then sold the operating company and moved most long-held family assets into trusts. Michael knew Dad was wealthy. Everyone did. He also knew Dad had stepped back after my mother died. What Michael did not understand was that stepping back did not mean abandoning structure. 2 years before our anniversary, the Bennett Legacy Trust changed trustees. Dad remained investment trustee for liquid assets and major portfolio strategy. I became property trustee for 3 legacy parcels my mother had cared about: Bennett Wharf, a ranch outside Fredericksburg, and a historic block in Fort Worth. Why me? Because I am a land use attorney. Or was. For 14 years. I practiced real estate and municipal law. Then my mother got sick. I reduced my workload. After she died, I left my firm and began advising 2 nonprofits and the family trust part-time. Michael told people I had retired from law. That was easier than explaining. I still review easements, land use agreements, title commitments, and conservation restrictions. But I no longer bill 2,000 hours a year. His family shortened it further. Grace doesn't really work. Then Grace lives off Michael. That one was funny because our house was mine before marriage. Not trust property. Mine. My mother bought it with me when I was 30. Michael paid for renovations later. His family saw the renovated house. They remembered the check. They forgot the deed. I stopped correcting them. Silence is efficient until someone begins using it as evidence. Michael's mother, Evelyn Hartwell, especially liked the story. She came from a family that had once had money and then spent 30 years preserving the appearance of it. She believed men who earned money deserved reverence, and women who inherited anything needed discipline. At Thanksgiving, the year before the anniversary, she told me, "Michael gave you a beautiful life." I said, "We built one." She smiled. Of course. That was Evelyn's favorite way to disagree without technically saying no. Michael had one younger brother, Dan, who ran a construction supply company. One older sister, Paige, who married a surgeon and considered that proof of good judgment. They loved Michael. They also treated his ambition as a family asset. Harbor Point was supposed to make the Hartwell name permanent, not wealthy. Permanent. That distinction matters to families who confuse buildings with immortality. I had supported the project at first. The old district needed investment. The public promenade could reconnect neighborhoods to the river. The freight terminal was worth saving. And yes, the Bennett parcel made the whole plan better. 3 years earlier, the trust granted Hartwell Urban Development a development option, not ownership, not collateral, en option, for 36 months. Michael's company had the exclusive right to negotiate a long-term ground lease on the parcel if zoning was approved. Environmental review cleared. The project met public access requirements. An independent appraisal established fair value. And the property trustee approved final terms. Property trustee. Me. Michael knew the option existed. He signed it. He also knew my signature would be required later. At least. He should have. I drafted part of the agreement before Independent Trust Council finalized it. But Michael treated the option like possession. He told investors, "We control the land." Commercial shorthand. Common. Then the land is committed. Less precise. Then the land is sponsor contributed. Not true. I heard that last phrase for the first time 3 months before the anniversary. We were having dinner with 2 investors. One asked, "How much sponsor equity are you showing?" Michael said, "About 57 million, including contributed land." I looked at him. "What contributed land?" He kept smiling. "Bennett Wharf." The investor turned to me. "Grace. That's a hell of an anniversary gift." I said, "It's not contributed." Silence. Michael laughed. "She means the final structure isn't papered." I looked at him. "No. I mean the trust still owns it." He put his hand over mine. Of course, the conversation moved on. In the car home, I asked, "Why did you tell them the land was sponsor equity?" "Because economically it will be." Will be, is not, is. Grace. The trust has not approved a ground lease. It will. You don't know that. He looked at me. Your father supports the project. Dad supports the concept. Same thing. No. It was not. I said, "I am the property trustee." Michael laughed. Not cruelly. Dismissively. "I know. Then why are you talking like Dad decides? Because, Grace, your father is the Bennett Trust. I stared at him. No. You know what I mean. I did? That frightened me more. Michael believed legal structure was etiquette around practical power. Dad wanted it. Therefore, the trust wanted it. I would sign. Therefore, the land was committed. Future consent had become current collateral in his mind. I told him, do not represent the property as contributed until there is a signed agreement. He said fine. I thought the issue ended. 3 months later, we held our anniversary ball, and Kendra Blake walked onto the dance floor in my place. Kendra was Hartwell Urban Development's Director of Brand and Strategic Partnerships. She had joined the company 2 years earlier. 35. Dark auburn hair. Perfect posture. The kind of woman who could look relaxed while calculating where every photographer stood. She ran investor events, city stakeholder dinners, project branding, hotel partnerships, public relations, and most of Harbor Point's launch campaign. For 8 months, I suspected she and Michael were having an affair. Like most suspicions, it began with small things. Kendra knew details I had not told her. Which wine Michael hated, the name of his college roommate, the cabin we rented in Colorado, the song we danced to at our wedding. Michael began wearing a new watch. Kendra had selected it for executive brand photography. He began traveling to Houston even when Harbor Point had no Houston business. Kendra's apartment building appeared on our shared vehicle's toll history after midnight. I asked. Michael said, she's managing the biggest launch of my career. We work late. Then do you hear yourself? That was his version of dismissal. Make my question sound embarrassing. I stopped asking him. I did not stop looking. The anniversary ball was partly Kendra's production. That alone should have been impossible. My husband's Mistress planning our 15th anniversary. But at the time, I did not know. I knew only that she had turned a dinner I wanted small into a 500-person legacy event. Michael said Harbor Point investors will already be in town. We're celebrating our marriage. We're celebrating everything. The future. Again. At 8:30, the ballroom lights dimmed. The band began our wedding song. I stood near the center of the dance floor. The program said, Anniversary Dance Michael and Grace. Michael stepped onto the floor. For 1 second, I smiled. Then Kendra joined him. Not behind. Beside. Guests applauded because they assumed it was part of the program. Kendra wore silver. Michael took her hand. I stood 10 feet away. The band kept playing. I heard Evelyn Hartwell say, well, then laugh. Michael and Kendra began to dance. Not a full romantic embrace. Close enough. His hand at her waist, her hand on his shoulder. The room changed around me. Some guests understood immediately. Others thought Kendra was introducing a project segment. A screen behind the band lit up Harbor Point the next 15 years. My anniversary had become his project launch. I walked onto the floor. Michael saw me. His face tightened. Kendra smiled. Grace. I looked at Michael. What are you doing? He lowered his voice. Not now. This is our anniversary dance. Kendra is opening the Harbor Point sequence. Then why are you holding her, Grace? I looked at the screen. Photographs of old warehouses. Architectural renderings. River promenade. Hotel tower. Then a slide, built on legacy. Designed for the future. Below it, Hartwell Urban Development in partnership with the Bennett Legacy Trust. My stomach dropped. I had never approved that language. I turned to Michael. Take that down. He stopped dancing. Guests nearest us began watching. Kendra said, Grace, please don't derail the program. I looked at her. Our trust is not your project partner. Her smile disappeared. Michael stepped closer. Go sit down. No. Grace. No. The band kept playing awkwardly. I pointed toward the screen. Who approved that? Michael said. Your father. I laughed. No. He didn't. The room near us became quieter. Kendra looked at Michael. He said, we have the land consent. Every nerve in me went still. What land consent, Grace? What did you just say? He looked toward the banker's tables. Wrong move. I followed his eyes. Meridian State Bank's president, Laura Chen, sat with 2 credit officers and the title company's general counsel, all watching. I asked again, what land consent? Michael's face hardened. This is not the place. It became the place when you put my trust on a 40-foot screen. Kendra stepped between us. You are humiliating him. I stared at her. Move. She did not. Evelyn called from the edge of the floor, Grace. Stop making everything about yourself. I looked at my mother-in-law. At my anniversary, a few people laughed. Not kindly. Evelyn smiled. Michael built this evening. There it was. Therefore it belonged to him. I turned back. Michael. Did you submit something saying Bennett Wharf was approved as project collateral? He said nothing. Kendra whispered. She doesn't know, I heard it. Michael heard me hear it. His face changed. I stepped closer. What don't I know? He took my arm. Enough. Let go. Walk off the floor. No. His grip tightened. Grace. Did you use my name? He pushed me. Both hands. Fast. Hard. I fell backward. My hip hit the parquet floor first. Then my hand. The room gasped. Someone laughed. Then Evelyn Hartwell said, loud enough for people around her, finally, she knows her place. A few relatives laughed. I looked at Michael from the floor. He looked shocked. Then angry that I had fallen so visibly. Kendra stood behind him. The band stopped. No one moved for 1 second. Then a banker I did not know stood from table 5. A woman near the dance floor reached toward me. I held up a hand. I'm okay. I was not. But I stood. Fixed the strap of my dress. Smoothed the fabric over my hip. Then I walked to the edge of the dance floor and took my phone from a cocktail table. Michael followed. Grace. I did not answer. I opened my father's number. He was already at the hotel, waiting upstairs with Bennett Trust Counsel, Meridian State Bank's chairman, the construction lender, and the title company. The private verification session had been scheduled for 9:15. I was supposed to call when Michael finished the anniversary program and the borrower group was ready. The phrase Dad and I had joked about earlier was, they're ready. Ready for signatures. Ready for questions. Ready to stop pretending the land package was simple. I pressed call. Dad answered. Grace. I looked at Michael. At Kendra. At Evelyn. At the Harbor Point screen. Then said Dad, they're ready. He heard something in my voice. What happened? Come downstairs. Bring everyone? Michael stared. Who are you calling? I ended the call. You'll see. He laughed once. Grace. Your father is not going to blow up my project because you had a tantrum. I looked at him. You still think this is about the dance? 3 minutes later, the ballroom doors opened. My father entered beside Samuel Price, chairman of Meridian State Bank Shares, Diana Lowe, Meridian's chief credit officer, Rebecca Sloan, Bennett Legacy Trust's outside counsel, and Thomas Avery, president of Lone Star Title and Escrow. Laura Chen stood first. Then nearly every banker at the tables around her, not because my father owned them, because Henry Bennett had financed, developed, sold, and refinanced projects with half the people in the room for 40 years. Status has rituals. Standing was one. Dad saw me. Then my hip. Then Michael. His face changed. I shook my head once. Not here. He understood. He walked toward the stage. The MC handed him the microphone because the program listed him as a surprise anniversary guest. Dad looked at the Harbor Point slide behind him. Then at 500 guests. Good evening. The room quieted. He looked toward me. Grace. Are you able to stand? Yes. Do you want medical help? Later. He nodded. Then turned toward the bankers. I understand we're scheduled to discuss Harbor Point financing upstairs. Michael stepped forward. Henry. I can explain. Dad raised one hand. Not here. Michael stopped. Then Dad said the sentence that turned the anniversary into something else. Before any lender relies on Bennett Wharf as collateral, I want the property trustee to confirm that she authorized the land package. Every face turned toward me. Not my father. Me. Michael stared. Kendra stopped breathing. Evelyn looked confused. I said I did not. No speech. No revenge. 4 words. The title company president stood. So did the chief credit officer. And for the first time all night, Michael understood that the project did not need my father's anger to be in danger. It needed my signature. And he did not have it. The private verification session moved upstairs 40 minutes later. Not immediately. First, hotel security documented the push. The ballroom had cameras, not pointed directly at the dance floor for surveillance. Event cameras. 3 angles. One caught Michael's hands on my shoulders. One caught me falling. One caught Evelyn smiling afterward. I hated that one most. Not because she caused anything, because she looked satisfied. The hotel medic examined my hip and wrist. Bruising. No fracture. No head injury. I declined transport. Then my father asked, "Do you want to go home?" I said no. He looked at me carefully. Why? Because I need to know what land consent Michael thinks exists. That can wait. The loan cannot. Dad started to say something. Rebecca Sloan. Trust counsel. Interrupted. Henry. He stopped. Good. I was the property trustee. Not a daughter to be carried away from documents. We moved to a conference suite on the 22nd floor. Present me, Michael, his project counsel. Graham Ellis, Kendra, Meridian State Bank President Laura Chen, Chief Credit Officer Diana Lowe, Bank Real Estate Counsel, Lone Star Title and Escrow President Thomas Avery, Title Counsel, Rebecca Sloan for the Bennett Trust, my father, and 2 independent directors of Hartwell Urban Development's investment vehicle. The room looked less dramatic than the ballroom. Bad carpet. Water bottles. Legal pads. A screen showing Harbor Point closing readiness. The sort of room where expensive decisions become checklists. Diana Lowe opened. We are not closing anything tonight. Michael's face hardened. No one said we were closing. Then we're aligned. We were scheduled for a verification meeting. We still are. She looked at me. Miss Hartwell. Meridian's current collateral package includes a draft ground lease and owner consent certificate for Bennett Wharf. You are identified as property trustee and authorized signatory to LB. I have never signed a ground lease. Diana nodded. Have you signed an owner consent certificate? No. Any contribution agreement? No. Any estoppel acknowledging Hartwell Urban Development's right to pledge the leasehold? No. Michael leaned forward. Grace. I looked at him. He said, "You're being too literal." Every lawyer in the room went still. I almost laughed. Rebecca Sloan did not. Mr. Hartwell, she said. This is a title verification meeting. Literal is the assignment. Michael looked at his counsel. Graham Ellis closed his eyes for half a second. That was when I realized even his own lawyer did not know what was coming. Thomas Avery. Title President. Put a PDF on screen. Owner consent and collateral acknowledgement, Bennett Wharf Property Trustee Grace Bennett Hartwell. My name. My address. My trust title. Assignature. Mine. Except not mine. It looked good. Very good. Not an obvious copy. The loops were right. The G was right. The long tail on Hartwell was almost right. I said I did not sign that. Michael spoke immediately. You approved the substance. No. You approved Harbor Point using the parcel. I approved an option to negotiate. Some project. Not same authority. Diana asked Michael. Did you witness Grace sign this document? He looked at the screen. No. Who did the notary? Thomas Avery opened the notarial acknowledgement. Notary Amanda Pruitt. Date May 17. Location Dallas County. I searched memory. My Onyede. I had been in Santa Fe for a preservation conference. I pulled out my phone. Calendar. Flight receipt. Hotel. I looked at Rebecca. I was in New Mexico. Rebecca wrote the date. Michael said, maybe the date is wrong. Thomas replied, then the acknowledgement is defective. Graham Ellis said, let's slow down. That was reasonable. He turned to Michael. Where did this come from? Michael looked at Kendra. Kendra looked at him. Not good. Then Michael said, project administration. Kendra's face changed. I saw it. Diana saw it too. Ms. Blake. Kendra swallowed. I assembled the closing data room. Did you upload this document? Yes. Where did you receive it? Michael's office. Michael turned. Chandra. She looked at him. You sent me the PDF. He said I sent you the final package. Exactly. Not accusation. Sequence. Graham interrupted. Nobody is going to speculate about creation history in this meeting. Good lawyer. Thomas Avery said, we don't need speculation. We need chain. He pulled the document metadata from the title file. Received by Lone Star titled June 2. From Kendra Blake. File name Bennett, Wharf, owner, consent, executed. PDF. Prior file history uploaded to Hartwell Data Room, May 29. Source user M. Hartwell. Michael's login. He said, that proves I uploaded it. Not that I created it. True. Rebecca asked, do you have a paper original silence? Michael looked at Kendra. Kendra said I never saw one. Thomas said, we requested original wet ink or verified digital certificate twice. Graham looked at Michael. Did you receive those requests? Probably. Did you answer Kendra handled title? Kendra's jaw tightened. I asked you for the original. Michael said nothing. She opened her laptop. Graham raised a hand. Counsel should review before documents are shared. Kendra closed it. Fair. The meeting paused. My father had not spoken in 12 minutes. Then he said, I need to leave. Michael looked at him. Henry. Don't. Dad ignored him. He looked at Diana. From this point, anything involving the validity of Grace's signature, the trust's willingness to proceed, or lender response to the incident, is conflicted for me. Diana nodded. Understood. I said, Dad. He looked at me. I am property trustee. I know. I may need you as investment trustee. Rebecca answered for him. Not tonight. The trust agreement allows the property trustee and independent trust counsel to address title and land use questions without Henry's vote at this stage. I nodded. Dad said, if you want me as your father, call me. Then he left. That mattered more than every banker standing downstairs. Michael watched him go. You told him to recuse, no. He just walked out of the meeting about his own land. I looked at him. Not his land. There. Again. The Bennett Legacy Trust owned it. Dot was a trustee. I was a trustee. Neither of us was the land. Michael's entire problem fit inside that distinction. The meeting resumed. Diana said Meridian will suspend credit committee consideration until title authority is verified. Michael leaned forward. That will kill the schedule. It may affect it. We have construction pricing expiring. I understand. We have a hotel operator deadline. I understand. We have investor capital already wired. I understand. You can't freeze $140 million because Grace says she doesn't remember signing a paper. I felt heat rise. Before I could speak, Thomas Avery did. Mr. Hartwell. Title company is not asking whether she remembers. She has denied execution. The notarization date appears inconsistent with her travel record. We have no original. Those are verification facts. Michael looked at me. Tell them you approve the project. I approve negotiations. Tell them you intended to sign. I intended to review final terms. Grace. Michael. He looked around the room as if searching for someone who understood business. That was his oldest trick. Make precision sound naive. Deanna did not rescue him. She asked, what exactly has Meridian been told the trust is contributing? The bank's real estate council opened the current sources and uses schedule. Sponsor equity $42 million cash. $31 million land contribution, leasehold value, $18 million investor deposit. Other equity, $9 million. Total $100 million. Land contribution, Bennett Wharf. I stared. $31 million. That was not even the current appraised value. The independent trust appraisal 6 months earlier had valued the land at $48, $7 million unencumbered. Michael's project model used $31 million contributable basis. Why lower tax and leasehold assumptions? Still, he was counting land the trust still owned, as if it were sponsor equity already delivered. I said, who authorized that line? Michael replied. The structure. That is not a person. He looked at me with real anger. The option gave us control. No. It gave you a negotiating right. Commercially. Same thing. Rebecca Sloan said no. Michael turned toward her. She continued. The option expressly prohibits assignment, pledge, encumbrance, or representation of ownership before execution of final ground lease. She opened the agreement. Section 7. Not a magic hidden clause. Ordinary language. Michael had signed below it. I saw his initials on each page. My stomach tightened. You signed this. He said, I know what it says. Then why did you tell the bank the land was contributed? Because we were going to close the lease. After I approved it. You were always going to approve it. There. The room went silent. I asked, why? Because you supported the project. That is not consent. Grace. We have spent 3 years building around that parcel. Whose choice was that? His face changed. You encouraged it. I encouraged a proposal. You reviewed plans. Yes. You introduced the city preservation staff. Yes. You helped shape the promenade easement. Yes. Then don't stand there like you're a stranger. I'm not. I felt my voice become calmer. That is exactly why I know what was and wasn't approved. Kendra looked at the table. For the first time. She seemed to understand the difference too. Diana asked, was there a final ground lease draft? Yes. Version 14. 99 years. Base rend plus participation. Public access covenant. Preservation obligations. Insurance. Construction easements. Lender cure rights. Casualty. Assignment. Michael's version contained one term I had never approved. A mortgagee step-in provision allowing Meridian to take over the leasehold if Harbor Point defaulted. Normal in many ground leases. Not automatically wrong. But the Bennett Trust Council had limited step-in rights to protect the historic freight terminal and public promenade. Michael's version expanded them. Rebecca opened red lines. Trust draft lender may cure default, but may not transfer control to prohibited uses without trustee consent. Hartwell draft. Lender may exercise all tenant rights and assign to a qualified institutional operator without further owner consent. Who changed this? I asked. Graham Ellis said, our real estate team proposed the lender form, enda prostav ened. Did I approve? No. Did Rebecca no? Michael said, these are ordinary lender protections. Maybe. Then why are we acting like fraud because lawyers are still redlining? We're not. I pointed to the signed consent. We're acting like there's a problem because someone represented the redlining was finished. That distinction finally reached him. He sat back. For 10 seconds. Nobody spoke. Then Kendra's lawyer arrived. Fast. Apparently she had texted one from downstairs. Her name was Maya Torres. She joined and immediately asked that Kendra not answer further creation history questions until documents were preserved and reviewed. Good. The meeting ended at 11:52 p.m. No financing. No signatures. No police. No dramatic firing. Meridian issued a written hold credit decision, postponed pending verification of owner authority. Title. Collateral structure. And borrower certifications. Lone Star Title suspended its commitment to ensure the proposed ground lease as collateral. The trust issued a preservation notice concerning all land consent documents. Data room uploads. Communications referencing Bennett Wharf. Notary records. And versions of the ground lease. Michael called it a temporary paperwork issue. I did not. I called it a question. Who signed my name? And why did my husband believe the answer would not matter once the project was big enough? The next morning. My anniversary flowers were still in the hotel suite. White roses. 300 of them. Kendra had ordered them. The invoice later showed that. I found that funny in a way that made me want to break something. Instead, I called my lawyer. Not trust counsel. My lawyer. Her name was Elena Park. We had worked together years earlier at the same firm. She handled business disputes and, increasingly, wealthy people who discovered marriage had become document review. I told her the dance. The push. The land consent. The signature. The notary date. The affair I suspected. She listened. Then, do you want to preserve the marriage? I stared at the roses. I don't know. Do you want to preserve your legal position? Yes. Good. Easier question. Her first instructions: do not access Michael's work accounts. Do not log into shared project systems using passwords. He gave me, do not remove documents from his office. Preserve what is lawfully in my possession. Communicate about the trust through trust counsel. Communicate about the marriage through her if necessary. Do not negotiate Harbor Point alone with Michael. I hated the last one. I am the property trustee. Yes? I have to negotiate land terms. Then, do it with trust counsel and documented channels. I don't need a chaperone. You need a record. Fair. At 10:30. Rebecca Sloan called. Amanda Pruitt says she did not notarize the owner consent. I sat down. How sure? Very. Amanda had worked with the Bennett Trust before. Her seal appeared on a real easement acknowledgement from 2 years earlier. Same commission number. Same expiration date. Same visual block. Different document. The owner consent PDF had copied the entire notary acknowledgement from that earlier easement. Not just my signature. The notary too. Rebecca continued. The signature image appears to come from the Promenade Access Agreement you signed 18 months ago. I remembered. A temporary public path easement for city survey crews. My signature there had the exact long tail on Hartwell. The copied consent had compressed it slightly. Who had that file? The trust. City Council. Michael's project team. Title company. Many people. Metadata preliminary. We need proper forensic collection. Anything the PDF was assembled in Adobe under a Hartwell Urban Development Enterprise license. User we don't know yet. I closed my eyes. Michael could be any authorized user. Good. No guessing. Then Lone Star Title is contacting Amanda directly for affidavit. Will this be reported? Potentially. False notarization can create legal issues. We are preserving before characterizing. Again. Facts first. At noon, Hartwell Urban Development's 2 independent directors placed Michael on temporary leave from Harbor Point financing activity. Not from the company. He remained CEO. Could manage other projects? Could not communicate with Meridian about Bennett Wharf, alter the data room, direct staff involved in land consent documents, or negotiate with the trust. Why did Hartwell Urban have independent directors? Because Michael had taken institutional investment 3 years earlier. A pension-backed real estate fund called Northgate Capital owned 29%. Michael owned 46%. Senior employees and early investors held the rest. The 2 Northgate-appointed directors did not care that I was Michael's wife. They cared that a $230 million project might contain a false owner consent. Northgate's representative, Celia Warren, called me. Grace. I want to be clear. We are not asking you to sign anything. Good. We are trying to determine whether Harbor Point can proceed. So I. Do you want it to? That question surprised me. I don't know. Fair. Then she said we have $18 million funded into Project Escrow. I know. Most is refundable if financing fails for title reasons before the outside date. Most $3.2 million has already been spent or committed on design, entitlement, deposits, and early site work. My stomach tightened. Not Michael's money alone. Investors, consultants, contractors, real work. Celia continued. If Bennett Wharf cannot be used, there may be a redesign. How bad preliminary vary? Meaning hotel access shifts north. Public promenade breaks. Garage footprint changes. Utility relocation adds cost. We'd likely need new city review. How long? 6 to 9 months. Financing current commitment probably dies. There it was. My signature really could decide whether the current project survived. I did not like that power. People imagine leverage feels satisfying. Sometimes it feels like a weight placed on your chest by someone else's choices. Celia said, "Do not answer today." I wasn't going to. Good. Then, one more thing. What Michael's team represented, that trust closing consent, was a ministerial item. I laughed once. Whose word? Michael's. Of course. Grace. I need to ask directly. Before last night, did you ever tell him you would definitely sign? No. Did you tell Northgate no? Did you tell anyone? No. Did you participate in investor materials showing land as contributed equity? No. You attended 2 investor dinners. Yes? At one you corrected him. Yes. We have a witness. I remembered the investor. Who? Jeremy Cole. He had emailed Northgate that morning. His note. For record. At March dinner, Grace Hartwell expressly stated Bennett Wharf had not been contributed and final trust documentation was outstanding. Michael characterized difference as paperwork. That one email mattered. It proved the disagreement existed before the anniversary, before the push, before Dad entered, before public humiliation. Michael could not say, I invented a land objection in retaliation. At 1:30, Evelyn Hartwell called. I almost did not answer. Then did. What? She skipped hello. You have made your point. I closed my eyes. What point? Michael behaved terribly. That's not a point. That's a fact. Grace. What do you want? Sign the land papers. I laughed. She continued. Do not destroy his company because you're hurt. Do you know what papers you're asking me to sign? The Harbor Point property? Which document? Silence. Ground lease. Silence. Owner consent. Assignment rights. Lender estoppel. Construction easement. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I am asking what you want me to sign. I want you to stop using your father's money as a weapon. There it was. I said Dad does not own Bennett Wharf. Please. The trust does. Same thing. I almost smiled. Family phrase of the year. No. Grace. Everyone knows how your family works. Apparently not. She became angry. Michael has supported you for 15 years. I practiced law for 14 of them. Part-time at the end. My house was mine before I married him. He renovated it. Yes. He paid for your life. No. You always had somewhere to fall back. That was true in one sense. Family money creates safety. I did not deny it. Yes. He had privilege? She seized on the word. Exactly. That still does not give Michael title to trust land. She exhaled sharply. You sound like a contract. Today I am one. Then I asked, did you know about Kendra's silence? Long enough. Evain. I knew they were close. Did you know they were sleeping together? I suspected. At our anniversary, Grace, did you know? Michael said the marriage had been over emotionally for years. My hand went cold. He said that to you? Yes. When months ago, and you said nothing to me. It was not my place. I almost laughed. Last night she had announced my place in front of 500 people. Now boundaries. Was it your place to laugh when he pushed me? I didn't laugh at the push. What did you laugh at? The scene. I said nothing. She continued. Softer. I thought you were finally seeing that Michael had outgrown this dynamic. There are sentences that close doors more cleanly than anger. That was one. What dynamic? You never wanted the life he was building. I helped him build it. You tolerated it. No. Grace. You always acted like his projects were too loud. Too ambitious. Too commercial. I negotiated his first tax increment district for free. She stopped. What I introduced him to the preservation consultant who saved the Stockwell warehouse deal. Silence. I drafted the original Bennett Wharf option. She said nothing. I gave him years of legal help because he was my husband. Then I stopped billing hours, and your family decided I stopped knowing things. Evelyn's voice changed. I didn't know. That's the first accurate thing you've said. I ended the call, not proud. Necessary. At 3. Kendra's lawyer contacted Trust Counsel. Kendra wanted to cooperate. That moved faster than Michael expected. She provided a preservation copy of her project emails and asked for a joint protocol so she would not be accused of destroying company data. Smart. The first email that mattered was dated May 14. Kendra to Michael title, still needs Grace owner's consent. Thomas says, no original in file. Michael used trustee package from Promenade Docs. Kendra? For signature Michael, she approved land use. We don't need to keep asking same question in different forms. Kendra Rebecca will want wet signature. Michael data room needs executed copy now. Originals before closing. Kendra, who signs Michael use Grace trustee execution from prior package. I'll deal with her. I read the email through Elena after it became available in the trust's investigation. My body went cold. Not find Grace. Use Grace trustee execution. Kendra replied, that feels aggressive. Michael, it's a closing draft. Not recording. Kendra still says executed. Michael Kendra. Then. 6 minutes later, Kendra. Okay. Sending to Project Admin. Project Admin. A 26-year-old coordinator named Noah Bell. His interview was devastating because he had no reason to lie. Noah said Kendra sent him the May owner consent Word file, the prior permanent PDF, and a prior notarized easement. Instruction build. Clean execution copy for data room per Michael. He asked, "Do we have DocuSign?" Kendra replied, "Use prior trustee execution blocks." This is interim. Noah copied my signature image. Amanda Pruitt's notary block. Dates typed from Kendra's instruction. May 17. Why May 17? Because the lender checklist required owner consent dated after the latest appraisal. The appraisal was May 16. Noah did not know I was in Santa Fe. He thought interim closing package. That phrase matters in real estate. Teams often circulate execution versions before originals arrive. But an execution copy, using copied signatures, is not the same as an unsigned execution version. Noah said I assumed principals had approved using existing signature blocks. Why? Because Kendra said per Michael. Again, authority substituted for verification. Kendra's lawyer argued she believed the copy was a temporary data room placeholder that would be replaced before actual closing. That was plausible. Then another email. May 29. Noah should file say draft or execution copy. Kendra Michael wants executed for lender checklist. Noah. But not wet signed Kendra, he says approved. Noah. Okay. Kendra knew the label. She did not create the instruction alone. Michael wanted executed. Why Meridian's credit committee would not issue final commitment until collateral checklist showed owner consent in file. The project needed the green check. Not the paper at closing yet. The appearance of completion. This was not a sophisticated plan to steal land. It was simpler. Michael believed the signature would eventually be mine. So, using an old version early felt. To him. Like timing. The most dangerous fraud often begins as schedule management. Rebecca Sloan asked me if he had come to you on May 17 with this exact owner consent. Would you have signed? No. Why the lender step-in language? Anything else? The land valuation. Publique promenade maintenance. Environmental indemnity. So the substance was not approved. No. That mattered. Michael could not say he merely accelerated a formality. He accelerated past unresolved terms. Then the affair became document evidence too. May 29. 10:42 p.m. Michael to Kendra. Once credit clears. We can stop hiding everything. Kendra project or us Michael both. Kendra Grace Michael. After financing. There it was. Again. After financing. Kendra, you said after anniversary. Michael same window. Kendra, I am not doing another year in the background. Michael, you won't. Kendra, then don't put her on stage like we're happy. Michael, I won't. I stopped reading. The anniversary program was not merely taken over in the moment. Michael had planned to remove me from the romantic center before the event. Kendra knew. Maybe that was why she walked onto the dance floor so easily. She thought the humiliation was transition. My marriage, like the land consent, had become something Michael intended to formalize later after using the future as if it already existed. I called Elena. Filet? She did not ask what. Divorce? Yes. When today? You sure? No. That's not required. She filed before the courthouse closed. The divorce filing became public the next morning. Not because I announced it. Courthouse records exist. By lunch. A real estate newsletter had connected the anniversary video. The delayed Harbor Point financing. And our marriage. Its headline, Hartwell Project Faces Title Questions as Founder's Wife Files for Divorce. I hated founder's wife. Accurate. Reducing. Then the video spread. Michael pushing me. My fall. Evelyn's sentence. Finally. She knows her place. The internet loved that line. People edited it over the footage of my father entering. Then added captions. She knew her place owner. Wrong. I did not own Bennett Wharf. Another. Mother-in-law laughs before billionaire dad takes everything. Also wrong. Dad took nothing. Another housewife secretly owns husband's $230M project. Wrong in 3 directions. I was not a housewife. I did not own the project. The trust owned land the project needed. Details rarely beat revenge. I issued one statement through Elena. I am the property trustee for Bennett Wharf, which remains owned by the Bennett Legacy Trust. No final ground lease or collateral consent has been executed by me. The trust, lenders, title company, and Hartwell Urban Development are reviewing documentation. I will not comment further on pending family or business matters. Boring. Good. Michael's statement was more emotional. Grace and I have experienced serious personal difficulties. Harbor Point is a 3-year community development effort supported by investors, lenders, city partners, and hundreds of professionals. I remain confident that documentation issues concerning Bennett Wharf can be resolved and that personal conflict should not be allowed to destroy a project of public value. Personal conflict. Again, as if the fake signature emerged from divorce. Northgate Capital did not like the statement. Its board representatives asked Michael to stop making public project comments without approval. He refused at first. Then, Hartwell Urban's board voted 4-1 to appoint Celia Warren as interim project executive for Harbor Point. Michael remained CEO of the company, but Harbor Point Communication moved to Celia. That distinction hurt him. The project was his identity, not his company entirely. Harbor Point. He had named it, pitched it, walked the site at sunrise, convincingly described rusted loading docks as urban memory. Now an investor representative controlled its data room. Michael called me that evening, from a number I had not blocked. I answered because Elena had not yet established a communication protocol. Grace. What you filed? Yes? 48 hours after our anniversary, 15 years after our wedding. Silence. Then you are making permanent decisions while angry. I've been making temporary ones for too long. Very dramatic. You called. He exhaled. I need to know if you plan to kill Harbor Point. There. No. Do you want to talk about us, project? I don't know. That's not acceptable. I laughed. To whom investors? They can ask me through trust counsel. I'm your husband. Not for long. He went quiet. That hurt us both. Then, you know the land belongs in this project. No. Grace. I know the project was designed around it. You helped design that. I helped negotiate an option. You are hiding behind legal language. I am a land use lawyer. You're my wife. That is not a property authority. He stopped. Maybe he heard himself. Then I made a terrible paperwork decision. Who created the executed consent? You know. I know what emails show. Kendra sent it to Noah. At your direction. I told her to complete the checklist. Using my signature. I believed you had approved the land use. I told you not to represent the land as contributed. That was months before. Did I later change my mind? Silence. No. Then why did you? Because if we missed the credit committee, the hotel operator could walk. Construction pricing expired. And Northgate would reconsider. Exactly. What you decided the deadline mattered more than asking again. I knew your answer. Apparently, he became angry. Do you understand how many people this affects? Yes. Do you, Michael? I have spent 3 days reading contracts you should have respected. I know exactly who this affects. Then sign. That one word ended whatever empathy I had left in the conversation. Which document he stopped? What sign, what the ground lease? Version 14. Whatever version council finalizes. Owner consent, yes. Lender estoppel, yes. Construction, easement grace. Stop lawyering me. No. Silence. Then, that is the whole problem. He hung up. 2 days later. The trust received a formal request from Hartwell Urban and Northgate. Not emotional. Professional. They asked for a 45-day extension of the development option. The original option expired in 19 days. Why? The financing pause made closing impossible before expiration. If the option expired, Hartwell Urban would lose exclusive negotiation rights. Then the trust could walk away. Negotiate with another developer. Or hold the land. I had authority as property trustee to grant or deny a short extension if trust counsel found it consistent with fiduciary duty. There. Real power. Not hidden. Written in the option. Rebecca asked, "What do you want to do? I don't know." Good. Why is that good? Because if you knew instantly, I'd worry you're deciding as wife rather than trustee. I hated her. For 10 seconds. Then, what would you recommend? I cannot recommend until we assess economic effect. Assess. We did. Independent appraisal $48. $7 million current land value. Harbor Point proposed ground lease. Present value around $52 million under base rent and participation assumptions. Depending on project performance. Alternative immediate sale, potentially $45 to $50 million after transaction costs. Hold uncertain. Potentially more value but no immediate cash and ongoing property costs. Trust mission long-term income. Preservation of freight terminal. Public access. No obligation to maximize short-term sale price at any cost. Harbor Point still made economic sense. That was inconvenient. If the project had been terrible, refusing would be easy. It was not terrible. Michael's process was, Rebecca said, the trust should not destroy value simply because the developer's principal committed misconduct. He's my husband. That's precisely why we need to separate. Can we extend? Yes. Should we? Maybe. Helpful. She smiled. Then condition it. On what independent project governance? No Michael role in trust negotiations. No reliance on disputed documents. Fresh ground lease process from unsigned draft. Title and lender review. Reimbursement of trust forensic costs by Hartwell Urban only if independent board approves and determines company benefited from the rushed documentation. No public claim that trust land was contributed until actual execution. Reasonable. Not revenge. I signed a 30-day extension. Not 45. Why 30 enough for process? Short enough to prevent drift. Michael called it proof I wanted control. Northgate called it workable. Meridian reopened preliminary underwriting, subject to title cure. The city exhaled. Construction manager extended pricing on selected packages for 2 weeks. Not all. The hotel operator extended its deadline by 21 days. Momentum returned. Under different rules. Then the title forensic report arrived. The copied signature and notary block were confirmed. Amanda Pruitt signed an affidavit. I did not witness or notarize Grace Bennett Hartwell's signature on the May 17 owner consent. The notarial certificate appearing on that document reproduces my seal and signature from a prior easement instrument. I did not authorize reuse. The report also confirmed. Noah Bell assembled the PDF. Kendra directed him. Michael instructed Kendra to provide an executed owner consent using prior trustee execution blocks. No evidence. Noah understood the signatures were being represented as newly executed rather than temporary placeholders. Kendra understood the PDF would be used to satisfy a lender checklist. Michael knew Grace had not physically signed the document. That last one came from an email. Kendra, if Thomas asks for original again. What do I say, Michael? Tell him, Grace and I are traveling. Will wet sign closing set. Kendra, she's not traveling with you. Michael. He doesn't know that. Kendra, Michael. Just buy time. There. No ambiguity. He knew no wet signature existed. His defense changed. He no longer claimed the document represented a completed signature. He claimed the lender package was a preliminary internal closing file. Everyone understood originals would be required before funding. No deed. Lease. Mortgage. Or lien was recorded. No money was advanced against the land based solely on the PDF. There was no intent to permanently deprive the trust of property. Some of that mattered legally. A false document can be serious without becoming land theft. Meridian had not advanced construction funds. The trust still held title. No lien existed. Harbor Point investors had relied on the credit process more than the document itself. The bank's counsel wrote, "The issue is not that Meridian acquired an invalid lien. The issue is that credit approval was sought using a document represented as executed owner consent when no such execution occurred." Accurate. Hartwell Urban's board opened a formal investigation into Michael's conduct. Not Dad. Not me. Celia Warren chaired a special committee with outside counsel. Questions: Did Michael knowingly cause a false document to be placed in lender files? Did he misrepresent land control status to investors? Did he breach duties to the company by risking financing? Did his relationship with Kendra affect compensation? Project decisions or disclosure? Did the public push at the anniversary create leadership risk? The affair was last on my list. Higher on HR's. Michael supervised Kendra. She had received salary increases. À retention bonus. Project incentive units. And authority expansion. Were those justified? Maybe. Kendra was good. That complicated things again. She had led the city's public campaign, negotiated the boutique hotel branding partnership, secured 2 restaurant pre-leases, managed community meetings better than Michael did. Her compensation was high. Not absurd. The issue was review. Michael recommended every increase. No disclosed relationship. The compensation committee had approved 1 retention grant, based partly on his recommendation. Conflict. Then the committee found something that made me feel strangely sorry for Kendra. A draft employment plan. After Harbor Point financing, Kendra promoted to vice president. Brand and development. Not chief operating role. Not equity partner. Her affair messages told a different story. Michael, when this closes, you won't be reporting into marketing. Kendra, what does that mean, Michael? You report to me on everything that matters. Kendra, title Michael, we'll design it. Kendra, equity Michael, we'll fix that too. He had promised a future without defining it. Again. Use now. Formalize later. Kendra had helped build a false consent for a project she believed would secure her own position. Then Michael had put her on the dance floor at our anniversary. Not as equal. As a symbol. She looked powerful that night. Her actual employment rights were less clear than mine. That did not excuse her. It explained why she kept choosing visibility over paperwork. Everyone in Michael's orbit had been taught to trust the future he described. Including me. For 15 years. Hartwell Urban Development Special Committee reported 18 days after the anniversary. 74 pages. The findings were narrower than the internet wanted. Michael had not stolen Bennett Wharf. He had not recorded a fraudulent deed. No lender had funded against the parcel. No title policy had ensured a non-existent lien. No trust asset had transferred. That mattered. The committee also found Michael knowingly directed staff to create an executed owner consent document using Grace Hartwell's prior signature and a copied notarial block. Established. Michael knew no current wet ink or verified electronic signature existed. Established. Michael represented Bennett Wharf as committed project equity before final trustee approval. Established. Michael had been warned by Grace at least twice that final land contribution had not been approved. Established. Michael's conduct materially increased financing, title, litigation, and reputational risk to Hartwell Urban Development. Established. Michael maintained an undisclosed intimate relationship with Kendra Blake while directly influencing her compensation, authority, and project role. Established. The committee did not find that Kendra's work itself lacked value. Important. It did find her conflict should have been disclosed before Michael recommended compensation and delegated closing responsibility to her. The anniversary push was captured on video. The committee called it conduct inconsistent with executive leadership and creating material reputational risk. No adjective stronger than necessary. Then came the recommendation. Remove Michael as Chief Executive Officer. Retain him temporarily as non-executive founder-director pending shareholder process. Appoint Celia Warren interim CEO. Terminate his direct authority over Harbor Point. Financing. Personnel. And lender communication immediately. The Hartwell Urban Board voted 5-1. Michael voted no. One longtime director abstained because he was Michael's college friend and had social ties to our family. 5-1. Michael was out as CEO, not owner. He still held 46%. He could challenge. Campaign. Try to replace directors with enough shareholder support. He did not immediately. Why Harbor Point? A proxy fight would terrify Meridian. Northgate could exercise governance rights. The option clock was running. Every week mattered. For once. Michael's obsession with the project restrained him. Celia called me after the vote. Not to celebrate. We need a land answer in 12 days. I know. The extension expires. I know. Meridian's revised credit committee is on day 10. I know. She paused. Do you hate when people remind you of deadlines currently? Fair. Then we have a proposal. Fresh. Not Michael's version 14. New ground lease. 75 years. Not 99. No land contribution. The Bennett Trust remains fee owner. Hartwell Harbor Point LLC becomes ground tenant. Ground rent independently appraised base rent plus percentage participation after defined return threshold. Public promenade permanent recorded access easement. Freight terminal preservation covenant. Environmental risk split according to pre-existing versus construction-caused conditions. Lender cure rights, yes. Lender ownership temporary step-in permitted after default. But any long-term assignment requires objective qualification standards and cannot eliminate preservation, public access obligations. No personal guarantees from me or my father. No claim that trust land is sponsor equity. Leasehold value could support underwriting only after actual execution. That was much cleaner. I read every page. Then gave it to Rebecca. Then to Independent Trust Real Estate Counsel, who had not touched the prior drafts. Then to an outside fiduciary advisor. Overkill, maybe. After a false signature. Redundancy felt cheap. The fiduciary advisor, Martin Cho, asked me the question I had been avoiding. Would you approve this transaction if Michael were not your husband? I stared at him. That's impossible. Ture. The economics are fair. Preservation better than prior version. Public access protected. Counterparty Hartwell Urban under new management. Credit conditional but credible. Development risk high. Alternative use. Could hold. Do you believe Harbor Point is good for the trust? I thought. Potentially. That is not approval. No. What is stopping you? I almost said Michael. Then realized that was not precise. Trust. In the project. In the documents. Which documents? All of them. He nodded. Then don't solve emotional trust with legal distrust. Solve legal distrust with controls. I hated him too. Everyone I hired had become annoyingly useful. What controls? He listed them. Independent closing counsel. Verified electronic signing. No reused execution blocks. Trust-controlled document portal. Original authority certificate delivered directly to title. No borrower intermediary for trustee signatures. Annual compliance, reporting on preservation, public access covenants. Automatic notice of lender default. No modification of key land terms without property trustee approval or successor trustee process. Specific. Not believe Celia. Structure. Then came the harder issue. If I signed. Michael would say I had validated his assumption. See, she was always going to sign. The paperwork was timing. If I refused, people would say I destroyed Harbor Point because my husband cheated and pushed me. Neither public story mattered legally. It mattered emotionally. I asked Rebecca, what if I abstain? You cannot. Why? You are the property trustee. Can Dad decide? No. Independent trustee. The trust could petition to appoint one if you are incapacitated or have an irresolvable conflict. Am I conflicted? Yes. I stared. Then why am I deciding personal conflict does not automatically eliminate fiduciary authority? We have disclosed it, obtained independent advice, and separated your marital interests. The governing instrument specifically gives you responsibility for these parcels. Can I delegate? Not the final decision. There, the payoff nobody sees in a thumbnail. Power can be impossible to hand away. The trust was designed so Dad could not dominate the land after Mom died. Mom wanted me to make decisions. Now I wanted Dad to take one back. He could not. That night, I drove to Bennett Wharf alone. No security. No banker. No husband. The site was mostly dark. Old warehouse windows reflected city light. The freight terminal sat at the center like a brick animal waiting for someone to decide whether it deserved another century. The river smelled metallic. I walked the planned promenade route. Survey flags. Temporary fencing. Construction markings. Michael had brought me there years earlier before Harbor Point had a name. He stood on a cracked loading dock and said, "Imagine people eating dinner here." I said, "Imagine the floodplain." He laughed. We had been good together then. His ambition, my caution. Not enemies. Complementary. I remembered the first site plan spread across our dining table. He wanted to demolish the terminal. I argued to keep it. He eventually agreed. Then made preservation the center of the marketing story. I did not resent that. Ideas can become shared. I remembered negotiating with the city about river access. Michael staying up until 2 reading easement language he claimed to hate. I remembered Kendra later turning the history into beautiful renderings. She had done real work too. Harbor Point was not only Michael's ego. Hundreds of people had touched it. That made the decision clearer. Not easier. The trust should not reward Michael's misconduct. It should not punish a good land use simply because he committed it. I called Rebecca from the freight terminal steps. Prepare approval conditions. She did not sound surprised. You're signing. If the final documents satisfy them. Which conditions? I listed them. No Michael role in tenant governance for 24 months. She stopped. That may be difficult. Why trust can condition counterparty governance if it relates to risk? But we should avoid using land control to impose punishment unrelated to property. Correct. I changed it. Then not Michael personally. Require independent tenant governance and no officer with unresolved title document misconduct to have authority over trust notices. Lease amendments. Or property certifications. Better. Objective. If Michael later cleared whatever process applied, he could participate under rules. Not named exile. Next, trust forensic costs reimbursed by Hartwell Urban only to the extent the special committee finds them project-related and insurable, appropriate. Next, fresh environmental baseline. Next, public promenade escrow. Next, freight terminal restoration security. Next, no use of Bennett name in project branding without separate trademark, communications approval. Rebecca laughed. Personal, absolutely. Also legally clean. Good. Next, title company receives all trust execution directly from trust counsel. Next, any public statement about land says ground lease. Not contribution. Then I said, and rent. What about it? New appraisal, after financing terms. That could move economics. It should. Michael's old model used stale assumptions. If the trust was going to bind land for 75 years, value needed current evidence. The appraisal came back $50. $2 million land value. Ground rent increased modestly. Northgate complained. Then accepted. Meridian adjusted underwriting. Loan amount fell from $140 million to $132 million because lender no longer treated land as sponsor-contributed equity and revised leverage. That created an $8 million gap. Northgate offered $4 million more. Hartwell Urban needed $4 million. Michael proposed contributing it personally. Celia asked whether the company should accept. The board said yes. If subordinated equity. No governance rights beyond existing shares. No condition restoring him as CEO. Michael wired $4 million. That fact complicated the revenge version beautifully. The man who forged my consent also put more of his own cash at risk to save the project after losing control. He loved Harbor Point. I never doubted that. Love does not cure misconduct. It explains persistence. Meridian's credit committee approved a revised conditional commitment, not final closing. Conditions valid, executed ground lease. Title policy. Environmental update. Independent tenant governance. Equity funding. Resolution of false document representations in lender certification. That last condition required Hartwell Urban to deliver a correction certificate, signed by Celia Warren. It stated prior owner consent documentation, dated May 17, was not validly executed by the Bennett Legacy Trust and shall not be relied upon. All land authority is superseded by documents delivered directly by trust counsel. Michael hated that. He called it a public confession. It was not public. It was accurate. The final land meeting occurred 29 days after the anniversary. Sam Beaumont-Grand. Different room. Not the ballroom. A title company closing suite. I wore trousers. No anniversary dress. Dad did not attend. He sent one text that morning. Your call. I replied, I know. Then annoying. He sent a heart. In the room, Rebecca. Martin Cho. Lone Star Title Counsel. Meridian's lawyers. Celia. Northgate. City Council for the Promenade Easement. Environmental Council. No Michael. Not because I banned him. His board excluded conflicted former management from closing. The documents were on a secure signing platform. My identity was verified by video notary. Government ID. Live confirmation. Unique session. Audit trail. I almost laughed at the technological ceremony. Then the notary asked, do you understand the document you're signing? Yes. Are you signing voluntarily? Yes. Has anyone directed or required you to sign against your wishes? No. That question landed harder than she knew. I looked at the screen. Ground lease. Bennett Legacy Trust. Hartwell Harbor Point, LLC. 2 entities. Not marriage. Not family. Not assumptions. I signed. Then the owner consent certificate. Real one. Then the promenade easement. Then title affidavit. Each separately. No copied block. No future permission. Present consent. When the session ended, Thomas Avery said, "We have valid authority." 5 words. The project existed again. Not because my father saved it. Not because Michael owned the land. Because the actual owner, through the actual trustee, had finally said yes. And this time, yes meant yes. The construction loan closed 9 days later. $132 million. Not $140. Harbor Point's capital stack changed. More Northgate equity. More Michael cash. Less leverage. No imaginary land contribution. The Bennett Trust did not receive a ceremonial check. It received ground rent security. Closing fees. Environmental deposits. And a recorded lease. Boring. Real. The city issued a statement celebrating the financing. No mention of my anniversary. The hotel operator stayed. The construction manager repriced 2 packages higher. Project cost increased by roughly $6 million. Some design features were cut. A rooftop pool became smaller. Imported stone became local. A decorative bridge element disappeared. The public promenade remained. Good. Michael blamed the cost increase on the financing delay. Partly true. The delay happened because of his document. Also true. Celia Warren refused to let the board publish either simplified version. The company disclosed only Harbor Point financing closed, following completion of revised land, title, and governance documentation. Accurate. Then the authorities began asking about the false notarization. Not because I demanded it. Amanda Pruitt's affidavit triggered a referral from the title company and notary regulator. The copied seal mattered. My copied signature mattered. Noah Bell had assembled the PDF under instruction. Kendra had transmitted it. Michael had directed the process. The county prosecutor's office interviewed all 3. Noah cooperated immediately. He kept his job. Why? The special committee concluded he reasonably believed senior executives had authority to instruct document assembly and that he did not understand the file would be represented as a valid executed consent without later replacement. Hartwell Urban changed its closing policy. No staff member could paste a signature block into an execution document unless the signature was a verified, approved facsimile. The signatory had explicitly authorized its use for that document. And counsel confirmed the method. No more per principal? Good. Kendra's position was harder. She knew I had not wet signed. The lender wanted an executed file. Noah questioned the label. Michael told her to buy time. The signature was reused. She also had not invented the instruction. The board gave her a choice: resign under negotiated terms or face a termination process. She resigned. No severance beyond accrued compensation. No unvested project incentive. She repaid no land money because she had not received any that ward. Her prior salary and legitimate bonuses remained hers. The company did not take back every dollar she earned simply because she slept with Michael. That would have been absurd. Her Harbor Point work was real. Her judgment on the consent was not. Before leaving, she provided a final interview. The investigator asked, "Why did you agree to mark the consent executed?" She answered, "Because Michael said Grace had already approved the substance." Did you believe him? At first? Later, less. When did you know no valid execution existed? When title asked for the original. Why didn't you correct the file? Michael said he would get Grace to sign the closing set. Did you think that was likely? She paused. Yes. Why? Because he always got her to sign. That sentence hurt when I read it. Not because it was true literally, because it was how he described me. Reliable consent. The investigator asked, "Did you know Grace had objected to representing the land as contributed?" Kendra said, "Michael told me she objected to wording, not the project." Again. He translated my no into a stylistic disagreement. "Did you ever ask Grace no?" Why? Because Michael told me not to involve her in project administration. There. He controlled the channel. My own authority existed on paper while the people around the project were trained not to ask me. That is how someone can be legally central and socially invisible at the same time. Kendra gave one last answer. Did you walk onto the anniversary dance floor intending to replace Grace publicly? She looked down. I thought Michael was going to announce that Grace was stepping away from public involvement and I was taking over Harbor Point Communications. At their anniversary, yes. Did you think that was appropriate? No. Why do it? Because I wanted the future. He had promised to start being visible. That was honest enough to be painful. I did not need to meet her. She sent a note through Elena. Grace. I knew Michael was married. I knew walking onto that dance floor would humiliate you. I told myself the marriage was already over because he told me that was true. On the land document, I knew your actual signature was not new. I believed Michael when he said you had already approved the deal and would sign originals later. When Noah questioned the executed label, I should have stopped. I didn't because every deadline had become proof that the future was arriving. And I wanted to be inside it. I am sorry. Kendra, I kept the note for 1 week. Then deleted the scan. Not because the apology was worthless. Because I did not need to build a private archive of every person who finally understood. Michael's legal outcome took longer. Prosecutors did not charge him with stealing land. There was no land transfer. No mortgage recorded. No loan funded under the false consent. They focused on the document. Use of my signature without authority. Use of copied notarial certification. Submission into a lender. Title process. Michael eventually entered a negotiated resolution. He admitted he knowingly caused an owner consent document to be presented as executed when it was not validly executed. He accepted probationary supervision. Affine. Reimbursement of certain investigative costs. And a prohibition during supervision on personally certifying third-party signatures outside verified systems. The offense was serious. The outcome was not prison. Some commenters said, rich people never face consequences. Others said the whole thing was paperwork. Both were too simple. He lost CEO role. Promotion path. Unvested compensation. Control of Harbor Point. Part of his reputation. His marriage. He kept wealth. Shares. Professional ability. His future. That balance did not offend me. Punishment was not my project. The shove at the anniversary was handled separately. The video was clear. Michael accepted responsibility for misdemeanor assault-related conduct under a diversionary disposition requiring counseling and no unwanted contact with me outside legal channels while the divorce was pending. Again, no Yale. The state named what happened. That was enough. Evelyn Hartwell did not speak to me for 6 weeks. Then she arrived at my house without calling. I almost did not open the door. She stood on the porch holding a cardboard box. What is that, your things? My things. From the lake house. Michael's family had a lake house. I had left 2 sweaters. A cookbook. And a framed photograph of my mother. Evelyn found them. Illiterin. She looked around the house. The house she had spent years treating as Michael's gift to me. This was your mother's, no hide it. Yours, yes. Before Michael, yes. She sat. For once. No, come on. Then I was wrong. I waited. About what? She looked annoyed. Do you need categories? Yes. That almost made her smile. About you living off him? Yes. About the project being his land? Yes. About Kendra? I waited. Did you know I knew they were involved? Before the anniversary? Yes. How long? 3 months. My throat tightened. Why say nothing? She looked at her hands. Michael told me he was going to end the marriage after Harbor Point closed. Of course. Why did that make silence okay? It didn't. What did you think I thought 15 years was already over and you were refusing to see it? I stared. Based on what, Michael? There. One source. The person with the strongest interest in the story. Evelyn continued. He said you no longer cared about his work. That you wanted him to stay small. That your father looked down on him. That you used trust land to keep him dependent. I almost laughed. Did you ever ask me no? Why? Because I believed my son. That answer was not evil. It was ordinary. Parents do that. Then she said, I laughed because I thought you had come to the anniversary to sabotage him. At my own anniversary. I know how it sounds now. It sounded that way then too. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry. I looked at her. What changed? The land closing. What about it you signed? I understood. If I were using Bennett Wharf as revenge, I would have killed Harbor Point. Instead, I saved it under terms that removed Michael's false assumptions. Evelyn had no framework for that. You could have ended his project. Yes. But you didn't. Because it wasn't mine to punish him with. She looked at me. Then started crying. Not theatrically. Quietly. He built that company from nothing. I know. I watched him work every night. I know. I thought protecting it meant protecting him. Sometimes it means protecting it from him. She nodded. That sentence hurt her. I did not enjoy it. Before leaving, Evelyn asked, Do you hate me? No. Why? I'm busy. She laughed through tears. That was the beginning of a strange, limited peace. We never became close. We stopped being enemies. Sometimes that is enough. Michael's own family had harder conversations. Dean Hartwell had invested $2 million in Harbor Point through a family vehicle. He confronted Michael. You told us Bennett Wharf was done. Michael answered, It was supposed to be. Dean said, That isn't the same. Same thing. The phrase finally died. Paige asked, Did you really think Grace would sign after you used her old signature? Michael said, I thought she would sign before anyone relied on it for funding. Paige stared. Do you hear yourself? Good question. Michael did. Eventually, but not that day. Hartwell Urban held its annual shareholder meeting 4 months later. Michael owned 46%. Northgate 29. Employees and smaller investors 25. He could not remove the entire board alone. He could make noise. People expected a fight. He gave a 10-minute statement. I disagree with parts of the board's response and reserve my rights regarding compensation. Then, I also caused a document to be used before the signer had given final authority, and I damaged the company's credibility with lenders and investors. The room became still. I believed the approval would come because I believed the project deserved it. He paused. That belief was not authority. I was not there. Celia sent me the transcript because the trust was a landlord and counterparty. I read the sentence twice. That belief was not authority. Finally, Michael continued, I will not seek reinstatement as CEO this year. Not forever. This year, realistic. Then he voted his shares for the independent board slate. No proxy fight. No coup. Why? Partly because Harbor Point financing contained governance covenants, partly because Northgate had leverage, partly because he had learned that winning a vote while breaking lender trust could destroy value, maybe partly because he was changing. Motives can stack. The board remained. Celia became permanent CEO. Michael stayed non-executive director for another year. Hartwell Urban became less centered on his name even though it still carried it. That was strange. Companies outgrow founders before names do. Harbor Point broke ground 6 months after the anniversary. I attended. Not beside Michael. Not beside Dad. As property trustee. The ceremony had no anniversary branding. No Kendra. No family table. Celia spoke. The mayor spoke. A construction worker spoke. The preservation architect spoke. I said 3 minutes about the freight terminal and river access, then left before lunch. Michael attended from the audience. No speech. At one point, we saw each other across the site. He nodded. I nodded back. Then an excavator started. Ground moved. The project no longer belonged to our marriage. Good? 3 months into construction. Harbor Point found diesel underground. Not metaphorical diesel. Actual diesel. The excavation crew was trenching for utility relocation along the south edge of Bennett Wharf when a worker smelled fuel. Work stopped. Environmental consultant called. Soil samples taken. Then groundwater. Then more samples. Buried beneath an old concrete pad were 2 steel tanks nobody had documented in the current property file. One had leaked. Maybe decades earlier. The preliminary estimate for investigation and remediation between $2 and $5 million. The lease was very clear. Pre-existing environmental conditions on Bennett Wharf belonged to the landowner, the Bennett Legacy Trust. Us. For the first time since the anniversary, Michael's company had a claim against my side. Celia called. Grace. I heard. We've stopped work in that zone. Good. We may have schedule impact. Understood. Trust counsel. Already involved. Then I want to make sure you know no one is accusing the trust of hiding it. Yet. She paused. We have no evidence anyone knew. That became the question. Did we know the trust archive held property records dating to the 1960s? Lease files. Survey plats. Warehouse maintenance. Old environmental reports. Insurance claims. Rebecca hired an independent environmental lawyer. I insisted. Not the same counsel who negotiated the ground lease. Fresh eyes. Her name was Sofia Ramirez. She asked, "Do you want the good news or bad news?" Bad. Your 2008 environmental assessment mentioned possible historic fuel storage. My stomach dropped. Where Appendix C? I had never seen it. Dad had. Maybe. The 2008 report mapped a former truck maintenance area, one suspected underground tank, and stained soil near an old fueling island. Recommendation: further investigation before redevelopment or change of use. What happened? Nothing. The parcel stayed industrial. Existing tenants remained. No major excavation. The note sat in the archive. Then in 2014. Another consultant wrote, no evidence of current active release. Historic tank status unresolved. Again. Nothing. Dad was investment trustee then. I called him. Did you know about the tanks? Silence. Which tanks? 2008 report. Oh. That, frightened me. You knew. I knew there was an old fueling area. Did you know the tank status was unresolved? I don't remember. Dad. Grace. I read thousands of pages over decades. That is not an answer. He exhaled. Probably. My chest tightened. Why wasn't it remediated? Because the property was not being redeveloped. The report recommended investigation. Before redevelopment. Which Harbor Point is. Did the consultant file make it into the option diligence room? I stopped. Good question. Rebecca checked. The 2008 report had been uploaded when the development option began. Folder environmental, historic. Hartwell Urban had access. Michael's environmental consultant produced a Phase 1 3 years later. Its report referenced prior industrial use, but did not identify confirmed underground storage because site records were incomplete and geophysical scanning covered only planned building footprints, not the later utility alignment. So both sides had pieces. Trust archive: old suspicion. Developer access to archive. Consultant: incomplete follow-up. No deliberate concealment established, just a risk everyone assumed someone else had resolved. Again, the independent review allocated responsibility according to the lease. Pre-existing contamination trust. Investigation costs tied to construction sequencing shared under specific provisions. Schedule mitigation project. No one got to turn the environmental problem into moral leverage. Michael tried. Of course. At a Hartwell Urban Board meeting, he said, "We lost 6 weeks because Grace's family land had undocumented contamination." Celia corrected him. "Current estimate is 3 weeks." And the historic report was available in the project data room. Michael replied, "The trust should have cleaned it." Northgate director asked, "Did Hartwell Diligence identify the unresolved tank?" Note, Michael said, "Environmental team reviewed it." "Then why didn't you require closure?" Silence. Exactly. The project had rushed land certainty on signatures while treating physical uncertainty as background. Documents got attention because lenders needed a box checked. Soil did not, until it smelled. I hated how familiar that felt. The trust board met. My father wanted a cost cap. Excavate affected soil. Remove tanks. Monitor groundwater. Do not gold plate remediation. Sofia Ramirez said, "Regulatory standard determines cleanup, not aesthetic preference." Dad glared. I smiled. He noticed. Enjoying this, a little. The estimate settled at $3. $6 millions. Trust responsibility $2. $4 millions. Project, wit sense. Ling ling ling. Insurance recovery potentially $400. 000 depending on historic policy. The Bennett Trust paid its share from property reserves. Not Michael. Not Northgate. Our land. Our old problem. At the board meeting, I voted for full remediation. Dad did too. Then, he said, put the 2008 report failure in the governance review. What failure? Archive flagging. Good. The trust had thousands of legacy documents. No system for converting old unresolved environmental recommendations into active property alerts. We built one. Any report with unresolved contamination. Title exception. Structural deficiency. Life safety issue. Or future action recommendation received a persistent flag until closed. Boring. Useful. Harbor Point delayed 27 days. The project absorbed cost. The trust absorbed cost. No villain. Then something unexpected happened. Michael helped. Not through authority. He no longer controlled the project. But he remembered an old tenant. Riverside Truck Service. The company had leased part of Bennett Wharf in the 1980s. Michael had interviewed the founder during early Harbor Point historical research because he wanted stories for the freight terminal exhibit. The founder's son still had old photographs. One showed the fueling island. Another showed a tank replacement in 1987. The photos helped consultants locate a second fill line and reduce excavation uncertainty. Celia asked Michael for the archive. He provided it immediately. No conditions. The remediation finished faster because of information he had preserved. I learned from Rebecca. For a moment, I felt grateful. Then angry that gratitude existed. Human emotions hate accounting. Someone can cause one problem and help solve another. The ledger does not have to net to zero. I sent Michael one email. Thank you for the Riverside photographs. They helped the trust resolve the tank area. He replied, "You're welcome. I should have pushed environmental harder 3 years ago." That was all. No marriage. No Kendra. No land consent. I appreciated the boundary. My father used the environmental issue to ask me another difficult question. Do you still want to be property trustee? We were sitting at his house. Why, you've had a year. So, your mother wanted you involved. That doesn't mean you owe the trust your life. I don't. Are you sure? I looked at him. He continued. You left your firm partly for her. Yes. Then took the parcels. Yes. Then Michael built a project around one. Yes. Now your marriage, work, and family land are all one knot. I hated the description because it was accurate. What are you suggesting, professional co-trustee? I don't need supervision. Not supervision. He paused. Succession. Dad had spent decades acting as if every asset needed a family hand on it. Now he was suggesting the opposite. I thought Bennett Wharf mattered to you. It does. Then why give authority away? Because caring is not a qualification. I laughed. You should put that on the family crest. He smiled. Then I want the trust to survive us. We appointed a professional co-trustee for administration and compliance. I retained final property strategy authority under the governing instrument for the 3 legacy parcels until the next scheduled trust review. Not full withdrawal. Not permanent family control. Layered responsibility. The professional trustee handled payments, notices, insurance, environmental follow-up, execution procedures, record keeping. I handled land strategy, preservation, major lease decisions. Much better. The first time the co-trustee asked me to complete a conflict form before voting on a Harbor Point amendment, I felt insulted, then laughed at myself. Rules are always more charming when applied to someone else. I completed it. Conflict. Former spouse is substantial shareholder and director of tenant parent company. Mitigation. No direct communication. Independent counsel. Economic analysis. Board documentation. Clear. The amendment passed. Harbor Point construction resumed. Steel rose. Concrete poured. The old freight terminal received a new roof. Then the city discovered the promenade design violated an accessibility slope requirement at one ramp. Not fraud. Engineering. Redesign. Michael would have hated the delay. Celia approved it without drama. The project learned how to survive corrections without treating every correction as betrayal. That may have been its most important improvement. My divorce did not progress as cleanly. Michael disputed valuation of Hartwell Urban shares. The company was worth less after the scandal. Then more after Harbor Point financing. Then less after environmental delay. Private company valuation is a form of weather prediction with spreadsheets. His 46% stake contained some premarital value. Major marital appreciation. Capital contribution. Tax complication. Elena brought in valuation experts. Michael's side did too. Numbers differed by nearly $40 million. I almost laughed. Can both be serious, Elena said. Unfortunately, I did not want company shares. Why, she asked. Because I don't want voting rights over his work. Shares could have economic upside. Then structure payment. That became the negotiation. Michael kept his Hartwell Urban shares. I received cash. Investment assets. A structured equalization note. And a larger portion of other marital property. The note payments were linked partly to future liquidity, but not to my control. No board seat. No voting proxy. No right to direct Harbor Point. Economic separation without governance, entanglement. Good? The house remained mine, because premarital title and tracing supported it. Subject to reimbursement for documented marital improvements. Michael received credit for renovations. Fair. Evelyn hated that. Then stopped commenting. Progress. One asset neither of us wanted was the anniversary art. Kendra had commissioned a sculpture for the ballroom. 2 interlocking bronze arcs. Title 15. Cost $82. Ling ling ling. Paid by Michael personally. After the event, it sat in storage. During mediation, Elena asked, "Who gets the sculpture?" I started laughing. Michael's lawyer did too. For the first time in months, all 4 people in the room laughed at the same thing. Michael said, "Sell it." I said, "Please." Auction estimate $28. Ling ling ling. Humbling. It sold for tradive. Wu Bei. We split the proceeds. That felt like the correct value for symbolism after transaction costs. Our final mediation lasted 11 hours. By hour 9, money was mostly settled. The remaining dispute was language. Of course, Michael wanted a mutual confidentiality provision covering the affair. Harbor Point financing. The false consent. Family trust matters. And private marital communications. Elena said no. Not because I wanted to talk publicly. Because the proposed clause could restrict trust reporting. Lender cooperation. Legal process. And truthful professional disclosure. Michael's lawyer narrowed it. No disclosure of non-public financial information, except as legally required. Fine. No publication of private messages except for legal or regulatory purposes. Fine. Then Michael wanted. Neither party will characterize the May 17 owner consent as forged. I stared. Elena looked at me. No. Michael's lawyer said, the criminal resolution does not use that word. Then why prohibit it? Because forged implies intent beyond the admitted facts. That was technically reasonable. Words matter. We replaced it with neither party will knowingly misstate the documented facts concerning the May 17 owner consent instrument. Fine. No adjective needed. Then Michael asked to speak with me alone. Not actually alone. Lawyers in adjacent rooms. Door open. Voluntary. I agreed. He entered carrying coffee. Set 1 cup near me. My usual order. I did not touch it. Habit can feel intimate long after trust is gone. He sat across from me. You signed the lease. Months ago. I know. Then why say it? He looked down. Because I still don't understand why. I almost laughed. Fiduciary duty. No. What answer do you want? Why didn't you kill it? I thought. Because Harbor Point was not you. His eyes lifted. It was my project. Partly. I created it. Yes. You know what I mean. I do. He waited. I continued. You created the idea. Then architects changed it. The city changed it. I changed the land terms. Kendra changed the brand. Northgate changed the capital. Celia changed governance. Contractors changed design. Environmental conditions changed schedule. The project stopped being yours before you noticed. He looked hurt. I don't mean that as insult. It feels like one. Founders hate, plural nouns. He almost smiled. Then you could have refused. Yes. Did you want to? Yes. When? The night after the anniversary. He nodded. What stopped you time? Meaning I waited long enough to become trustee again instead of wife. Silence. Then I hated you when I read the email telling Kendra to use my signature. He looked down. I know. I hated that my approval had become a thing you scheduled. I know. I wanted the land to be the one place where no was permanent. He looked at me. Why wasn't it? Because that would still make the trust about us. He closed his eyes. That landed. I continued. The trust owns land. It has duties. Harbor Point under clean terms was good for the trust. My anger didn't change that. He said, I don't think I could have done that. I know. Not cruel. True. Then he asked, do you think I'm a bad person? I hated that question. People ask it when they want a verdict broad enough to replace details. I think you did bad things. That's lawyer language. Maybe. Do you think I loved you? I looked at him. Yes. He seemed surprised. Still, past tense is enough. Grace. You loved me. I paused. You also believed love meant you could predict my answer, and use it early. He swallowed. I thought I knew you. You knew what I usually did. What's the difference, Choice? The room became quiet. You knew I often supported you. You turned often into always. He looked away. Then I did that with everyone. Yes. Kendra too, yes. She told you. Her letter? He nodded. I promised her things I hadn't approved. Yes. Because I thought I'd make them true. Yes. He laughed once. That's basically development. I smiled despite myself. That is exactly your problem. He laughed too. Then became serious. Developers live in the future. Lawyers live in the condition precedent. You always hated my optimism. No. What I loved your optimism. I felt tears. I hated when you used it as authority. He looked at me for a long time. Then I'm sorry I pushed you. Thank you. I'm sorry about Kendra. Thank you. I'm sorry about the signature. I said nothing. He continued. That one is the worst. I looked at him. Why? Because you had already answered. There. That was the apology I needed. Not I should have asked. I had. Not I thought you would say yes. I had said no to representation before final terms. He understood. You had already answered. Yes. I didn't like the timing of your answer. Yes. So I treated it as temporary. Yes. He looked at his hands. That is hard to live with. Good. He smiled sadly. Still sharp. Still a lawyer. You really did retire, I laughed. No. I know. That was another apology hidden inside a joke. He continued. I told people you didn't work because I wanted my work to be the center of the story. I felt something inside me loosen. Why? Because your family name already made me feel like people thought I had help. You did have help. Exactly. He laughed without humor. I wanted everything to look earned by me. Was it some? Most. He looked at me. Thank you. Don't get sentimental. He smiled. Then, your father never interfered. No. I spent years resenting him for influence he wasn't using. He had influence. But he wasn't using it on me. Not much. Why didn't you tell me he was coming with the bank group, confidentiality? Even before things got bad, especially before. He nodded. I would have behaved differently if I knew. I know. That sentence hurt him. Good. He said, that's humiliating. Why? Because it means part of my behavior depended on whether someone powerful was watching. Yes. He closed his eyes. I wish I could say it didn't. I know. Wysot. No reconciliation. No kiss. No dramatic hatred. Then he said, I hope Harbor Point works. So do I. I hope Celia doesn't ruin the hotel lobby. She probably will. He laughed. We ended the conversation. 2 hours later, we signed the settlement. The divorce decree became final 3 weeks after that. 15 years and 9 months after our wedding, I left the courthouse with Elena. No father. No bankers. No dance floor. She asked drink. It's 11 in the morning. Coffee, yes. We went across the street. I ordered the same coffee Michael had remembered. It tasted normal. That mattered. Hartwell Urban changed its name the following year. Not because of scandal alone. Northgate increased its ownership after funding later projects. Employee equity grew. Michael's stake diluted slightly through capital raises. New name Harbor Civic Development. Michael approved the change as a director. People expected him to fight. He said, if the company is bigger than me, the name should be too. Maybe Celia wrote the line. Maybe he meant it. Both possible. He resigned from the board 6 months later. Retained a substantial economic stake. No operational title. He started a smaller development advisory firm. No ground leases. Mostly strategy. I heard about it from trade press. Then stopped reading. Kendra moved to Denver. Joined a hospitality branding agency. No public statement. No memoir. Good. Evelyn sold the lake house after her husband died. She sent me the photograph of my mother we had found there. No note. Just the photo. I texted. Thank you. She replied, You're welcome. That was our relationship after divorce. Small. Civil. No revision. Dad remained investment trustee for another 2 years. Then retired from that role too. A professional fiduciary succeeded him. At the family meeting, he said, If Grace can make me fill out conflict forms, my usefulness is clearly over. Everyone laughed. I said, You are still useful for lunch. Generous. He remained my father. Not the trust. That distinction became easier with time. Harbor Point construction took 3 years. 1 year longer than the original schedule. Cost about $22 million over first budget. Reasons: financing delay. Environmental remediation. Material inflation. Design changes. Storm damage. And 1 contractor bankruptcy. The anniversary was only 1 line in a very long variance report. That humbled me. At opening, the project looked better than the renderings. Not because renderings were bad, because people existed in the spaces. Children on the promenade. Office workers eating outside. Cyclists. Hotel guests. Old men arguing near the freight terminal cafe. A woman walking a dog where a truck yard used to be. The freight terminal became a market hall. The brick remained. The river-facing wall kept its old faded shipping company name. My idea, Michael's too. Eventually, Celia invited me to the opening. As property trustee, I almost declined. Then went. Dad came as my guest. He was 81. Still walking too fast. The program listed City of Dallas. Harbor Civic Development. Meridian State Bank. Northgate Capital. Bennett Legacy Trust. Community Partners. No Hartwell family anniversary. Good. Michael was invited as founder of the original project. He attended. So did Kendra. No. She did not. Better. Michael stood in the crowd. Celia thanked him from the stage. Harbor Point began because Michael Hartwell saw a connected district where most people saw obsolete industrial land. Applause. True. Then she thanked me. Grace Bennett Hartwell. I had returned to Grace Bennett legally by then. She corrected herself. Grace Bennett. Property trustee. Who insisted that partnership begin with actual ownership documents. People laughed. I did too. A gentle joke? Earned. Then the promenade opened. No ribbon across the whole project. Instead, the city removed temporary fencing and people simply walked in. I liked that better. Michael found me near the river. Dad had gone to inspect a restaurant, he thought, overcharged for steak. Grace. Michael. He looked around. You were right about the terminal. I know. He smiled. I miss that. What you saying I know without apologizing. I laughed. He continued. Looks good. It does. Would have been taller if you'd let me use the original hotel footprint. Floodplain. I know. We smiled. Then I wanted to tell you something. What when Celia asked whether I wanted founder recognition today? I said yes. Good. I almost said no because I thought accepting credit would look like I hadn't changed. That would be ridiculous. I know. You did create it. Partly. I smiled. Look at you. He laughed. Then I also know it doesn't belong to me. I looked at the promenade. Nothing like this belongs to one person. He nodded. We stood there for a minute. Then his phone rang. He looked at it. I should go. Okay. He left. No closure music. No final embrace. A developer walking away from a project that survived him. That felt complete. 5 years after Harbor Point opened, Meridian State Bank refinanced the project. The original construction loan converted cleanly. Occupancy was strong. Hotel performance stable. Retail mostly leased. Promenade maintenant son budget. Environmental monitoring showed no new concern. A different lender wanted part of the permanent financing. Their counsel sent a trustee estoppel. The email came directly to the Bennett Trust portal. Not through Harbor Civic. Not through Michael. Not through a project assistant. Direct. The document asked the trust to confirm ground lease remained in effect. Rent, current. No known uncured default. No unauthorized amendments. No outstanding owner claims, except listed matters. Routine. I reviewed. One sentence was wrong. It said, landlord consents to collateral assignment of all tenant rights without further restriction. The lease did not say that. It allowed collateral assignment subject to the qualification and preservation provisions we had negotiated years earlier. Market it. Lender counsel replied, market language. Can you accept no? That old word. I typed, no. Please conform to section 22. No drama. No dance floor. No husband grabbing my arm. No father upstairs. No copied signature. Counsel revised. I signed 2 days later. Verified session. Audit trail. Done. That might sound like the least interesting scene in this entire story. It was one of my favorites. Because no became administrative again. Not rebellion. Not betrayal. A normal part of a transaction. Healthy systems do not collapse when someone says no. They revise. I eventually stepped down as property trustee. Not immediately. 8 years after Harbor Point opening, the professional co-trustee had become fully capable. My father's generation was gone from daily trust management. I had returned to more legal work. Teaching and advising on land use projects. At the family meeting, the trust nominated a professional fiduciary and my niece Caroline, who had become a conservation planner. Caroline looked terrified. I told her good. Why is that good? People who feel no fear around inherited authority usually need more supervision. She laughed. Then, what if Dad disagrees with me, my brother yes. Then he disagrees. What if the family hates a decision? They might. What if Grandpa would have wanted something else? Dad was still alive then. He sat across the table. I am right here. Caroline turned red. I laughed. Dad said, do not ask dead or retired people to vote from the grave. That became another family rule. The transition required signatures. Mine. Professional trustee. Successor trustee. Counsel. I signed an instrument, giving up authority. That felt stranger than acquiring it. For years, my signature had represented the power Michael tried to use early. Now I voluntarily transferred the role. No fear. Authority that cannot be surrendered becomes identity. I did not want that. Afterward, Dad asked, how does it feel like I forgot something? You did. What responsibility? That is the point. He smiled. Then your mother would be proud. I believed him. Henry Bennett died 3 years later at 87. Slowly. Heart failure. No surprise. In his final year, he stopped asking about Harbor Point numbers. That was how I knew he was truly retired. We spent more time talking about my mother. He admitted she had always thought Michael was too charming. Why didn't she tell me? She did. When repeatedly, I stared. What did she say? That he could sell umbrellas in a drought. That's not a warning. With your mother? It was. We laughed. Dad never rewrote himself as the wise father who saw everything. He liked Michael once, invested emotionally in him, admired his ambition, helped with introductions when we were younger, supported Harbor Point conceptually. That honesty mattered. One evening, I asked if you had been the property trustee after the anniversary. What would you have done? He thought. First night. Yes. Refused. Exactly. You would have killed the project. Probably. Out of anger, absolutely. I smiled. Then why did everyone think you were the powerful one? Because they confuse ability to act with ability to decide. Well, that was Dad. Then, you were better trustee than I would have been. Don't get sentimental. I am dying. Not tonight. He laughed. Months later, after he died, I found a note in his desk. Not addressed to me. A line on a yellow pad. Grace understood the land was not a weapon, even when it became leverage. I kept it. Not because I needed his approval, because I liked the distinction. Leverage exists. Pretending otherwise is naive. The question is what you do with it. Michael had leverage over staff, Kendra, project deadlines, my desire to support him, the social pressure of our anniversary. He used leverage to make future consent feel inevitable. I had leverage over Bennett Wharf. I could have used it to punish him. I almost did. Instead, I used it to require a real transaction. That did not make me morally superior. It made me a trustee, a role with edges. After Dad's funeral, Harbor Civic Development made a donation to the preservation nonprofit, where I served on the board. I returned it. Not because the money was tainted, because the nonprofit was reviewing a zoning position that affected one of Harbor Civic's future sites. Conflict. Celia Warren called. Grace. This is memorial support. I know. You're being ridiculous. Probably. Henry would have taken it. Exactly. She laughed. Fine. They donated to a literacy program instead. Dad would have hated the misnaming opportunity. I smiled for a week. Michael sent flowers to the funeral. No letter. I appreciated that. We had spoken only twice in the years before. Tax. One trust amendment requiring tenant notice. Our lives had become administratively connected at the edges. Then even those ended. His advisory firm grew. He became known for rescuing stalled development projects. That made sense. Michael had always been good when things were uncertain. His flaw was believing uncertainty gave him permission to force certainty. Maybe age taught him otherwise. I heard from Dean that Michael had a rule in his new firm. No signed owner document enters a data room through the developer. Owner counsel sends it directly. I laughed. Expensive lesson. Useful rule. Kendra eventually became a partner at the hospitality branding agency in Denver. I learned because one of Harbor Point's restaurants hired her firm for a rebrand. The conflict committee asked whether I objected. I no longer had authority over the parcel anyway. I said, why would I? The restaurant hired someone else for unrelated pricing reasons. No cosmic justice. Good. Evelyn Hartwell lived into her 80s. We exchanged birthday cards. Nothing more. On one card she wrote, I still regret what I said that night. I believed my son's success told me where everyone else belonged. I know better now. Evelyn, I kept that one. Her sentence had become one of the most quoted pieces of the viral video. Finally. She knows her place. People printed it over reaction clips. Used it in revenge compilations. Turned her into a cartoon mother-in-law. She was wrong. Cruel in that moment. Also capable of learning. That mattered to me. No one should be sentenced forever to the worst sentence they ever said if they spend years behaving differently afterward. Not even Evelyn. The Beaumont Grand eventually renovated the ballroom. I knew because a law school alumni dinner was held there. I returned 17 years after my anniversary. The chandeliers were different. The dance floor was smaller. White magnolias gone. I stood near the spot where I had fallen. Approximately. Memory does not record floor plans accurately. A colleague asked, "Are you okay?" Yes. She knew the story. Everyone in Dallas real estate law over 50 knew some version. Then the band started. Not our wedding song. Jazz. People danced. I did not. Not because of trauma. Because I hate organized dancing. That had always been true. Michael loved it. Another thing I had forgotten. A man named Robert Sue, a title lawyer I had known for years, stood beside me. He said, "Do you ever think about the fact that your whole life changed because a title company asked for an original signature?" I laughed. That's a very title lawyer interpretation. It's correct. Partly. What do you think changed it? I looked at the floor. I stopped letting people treat expected consent as actual consent. He nodded. Less catchy. Much. Then, for the record, Thomas Avery still tells the story of the fake notary block in training. Poor Amanda. She's a legend. Amanda Pruitt had become an advocate for secure notarial verification after the incident. She hated being associated with a false document. Then realized her affidavit had protected her reputation precisely because she kept good records. She began teaching notary groups, seal images are not authority. Signature images are not execution. Documents do not become true because they look finished. I attended one webinar anonymously. She was excellent. Everyone took pieces of the failure and built something better. No one planned that. Learning is not redemption. It is simply refusing waste. The law school invited me to teach a short seminar on real estate authority. I called it Woo Can Sign. Students expected title doctrine. They got trust authority, agency, entity authorization, notary, electronic signatures, lender reliance, ground leases, estoppel, document custody. On the first day, I put a sentence on the screen. We all know she'll say yes. Then asked, "Is that authority?" Students laughed. No. Why not? One said, "Because prediction isn't consent." Exactly. Another, "What if she told you yesterday she'd sign today, still not signed? What if the deadline is in an hour, still not signed? What if refusing kills the deal, still not signed?" Then I added, "What if the person later signs silence?" A student said, "The earlier fake is still fake." Yes. That was the lesson Michael took too long to learn. The eventual yes does not retroactively authorize the earlier use. Harbor Point's existence did not prove he was right. My later signature did not convert the copied one into timing. Consent is not retroactive simply because the future resembles the prediction. That principle sounds obvious in a classroom. It is much harder inside relationships. People who know us make predictions. She'll be fine. He won't care. Mom will say yes. Dad always pays. My wife supports me. My husband knows. My boss will approve. Most days, the prediction works. Then someone forgets to ask. Then asking begins to feel unnecessary. Then refusal feels like betrayal because it contradicts what everyone had already assumed. That is where danger begins. Michael did not wake one morning thinking I will forge my wife's consent. He spent years experiencing my support, then began treating support as a standing resource. My legal help, my family introductions, my tolerance of project obsession, my willingness to host, my quietness around his family, my trust. Every yes became evidence for the next one, until he stopped asking. Kendra entered the same system from the other direction. Every promise from Michael became evidence that her future role already existed. Promotion later. Equity later. Relationship public later. She acted inside a future she did not yet own. Evelyn did too. She assumed Michael's version of our marriage was enough to judge where I belonged. My father could have made the opposite mistake. He could have assumed being my father gave him the right to decide for me. He did not. That may be the most important contrast in the story. At the ballroom, 500 people saw Henry Bennett enter with bankers. They saw people stand. They saw Michael's face. That visual made the video. But upstairs, when the actual documents appeared, Dodd left. That is the part I teach myself to remember. The powerful person exited the room where his power was conflicted. The person everyone had called dependent stayed. Me. Not because I was secretly richer. Not because I secretly owned Michael's company. Because the document named the property trustee. Grace Bennett Hartwell. Role. Specific. Limited. Real. Years later, someone at a fundraiser asked me, "Wasn't that satisfying? Your husband shoved you and then found out your dad controlled everything." I said he didn't. The woman looked disappointed. What, my father didn't control Harbor Point. But he owned the trust. No. Then who did the trust own the land? She stared. Okay. But your family controlled it. Different trustees had different authority. Her eyes glazed over. I laughed. See why the viral version wins. She laughed too. Then, so what was satisfying, I thought? The first valid signature. She looked even more disappointed. I loved that, because satisfaction changed for me. At first, bankers standing. Then Michael's shock. Then the project hold. Then the fake document exposed. Those were dramatic. The lasting satisfaction was quieter. A secure signing screen. My own name. A notary asking whether I understood. Me saying yes. No one predicting. No one pasting. No one promising later. Present choice. That was the reversal. The 15th anniversary ball had been built to celebrate partnership, while Michael privately replaced me. He thought Kendra belonged beside him because she represented the future. He thought I belonged off the floor because I represented an old version of his life. His mother said, I finally knew my place. For years. That line made me angry. Now I think she accidentally asked the right question. Where was my place? Not on Michael's dance floor. Not at my father's banker table. Not inside the Bennett Trust forever. Not in Kendra's absence. Not in Harbor Point ownership. My place was wherever I could stand without someone else treating my presence as permission they owned. Sometimes that was a courtroom. Sometimes a title closing. Sometimes a classroom. Sometimes a river promenade. Sometimes alone in my own kitchen. The places changed. The choice did not. I never had to be the most powerful person in the ballroom. I needed the right to decide what was mine to decide. Michael's project needed land. The trust owned it. My role required judgment. I gave a real yes when the real terms deserved it. My marriage needed something simpler. Respect. When Michael stopped asking and started assuming, that structure failed long before I hit the dance floor. The push only made it visible. People still tell the story as my husband pushed me off the dance floor for his mistress, then my father entered the ballroom. That is what happened. But it is not why my life changed. My father entered. The bankers stood. Michael panicked. Then Dad asked one question. Did the property trustee authorize the land package? I said no. Everything after came from taking that answer seriously. Not forever. Not emotionally. Literally. No meant pause the credit. Check the signature. Verify title. Separate the conflict. Rewrite the lease. Ask again when the terms were real. Eventually, the answer became yes. That did not make the first no wrong. It proved why no had mattered. Because when yes finally came, it belonged to me. Michael pushed me because he thought I was standing in the way of the future he had already claimed. His mother laughed because she thought I finally knew my place. She was right about one thing. That night, I learned exactly where my place was. Inside my own decision, and no one ever got to sign for me again. Scriptwriter Nguyen Van Chien.